Hi, Ed. Welcome to the Power Talk Show powered by Business Talks Weekly. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and joining us today. It's our honor to have you on the channel. So, before we dive into a conversation, can you tell us a bit about your professional background and what landed you into sustainability?
Well, so my background is I'm a native of Miami, Florida. I grew up here. I went to university at Stetson University, which is the oldest university in the state of Florida, founded in approximately 1850. I had 2 degrees. I was a little confused in undergrad whether I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, so I took both a biology major and a political science major. At the end, I decided to go to law school. I went to Stetson University College of Law. I got my degree in 1985. Um, Very shortly after starting work with my first law firm, I was assigned to a project for a company called ABB, which at that time, it's a large Swiss conglomerate. Uh, and this company at that time built power plants, conventional power plants, the large ones that burn coal or oil or nuclear. With my science background, I found it very, very fascinating. I enjoyed it a lot. And I spent months working in Switzerland and in Germany. So for a brand new, freshly minted US lawyer, what a treat. I was working with engineers most of the time, learning about things such as the temperature of the steam that goes from the boiler into the turbine, and you have to keep the temperature within a certain range. The temperatures are very hot, and if they get too hot, it can burn or destroy the turbine. If they're too low, it doesn't generate enough power. So it was fascinating. This got me interested in the power generation business generally. So since I liked it, I started seeking out more legal work in that area, and then eventually started to work with a French company by the name of Alstom, another big brand name, very well known around the globe. Used to build power plants also. They build trains. Alstom has trains all over the world, including US. And they also build mostly high-speed trains, very high technologically based trains, not trains generally for like transporting goods, more for transporting people fast. And that led to other companies. And now I work with approximately 20 companies that build power generation facilities. From the traditional big power plant facilities, I started working with companies that built smaller power plants, which were fueled by natural gas or some fueled by diesel fuel. And then more recently, in the last decade, it's become more solar energy, wind driven energy, more efficient ways to capture the power that's being generated by the equipment. They have something called a heat recovery system, which allows you to capture the heat. Obviously, as the unit is functioning, it's generating heat itself. So the plan or the thought is to capture the heat that's coming from the unit and cycle that heat back into the unit to gain more efficiency and just not generally not to waste energy. And even more recently, the last 5 years, 5 to 7 years, we're starting to see this concept of carbon credits and sustainability become more important. So all of the clients that I service in the power generation business are interested in that. So I have some clients here based in South Florida who sort of, I would say, they backed their way into a company that became a leader, a global leader in sustainability. The story goes like this. My client consumes and builds very beautiful homes in South Florida. And to do that, they include very exotic and very beautiful but expensive hardwood flooring and paneling. So they started working with a company in Bolivia, which is a country not a lot of people spend much time thinking about, unless you're from Bolivia. But Bolivia actually shares the Amazon jungle with Brazil.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of exotic and beautiful trees in eastern Bolivia. And so my client, who is building homes here in Miami on Fisher Island, established a relationship with this essentially timber company. It was just a timber company in Bolivia to buy hardwood flooring, decking for docks, outdoor uses around pools, or around spas. And they had a nice relationship. And eventually, they liked the people so much they decided to invest and become 50% owners of the mills. And the company has 5 mills in 5 different locations in Bolivia. But not many people know much about the timber business, but I had to learn because became a part of my client's business. And it's just a rule of thumb that approximately 30% of a tree, if you harvest it, is used for the flooring. And the rest of the tree is generally just in the US chopped up and turned into mulch, which
Okay.
is a product that they spread around plants to make the grounds look beautiful.
Landscaping.
It's landscaping, wood chips, but it's really not a very efficient use of the remainder of the tree, the majority of the tree. Um, and about 4 years ago, our clients became aware of a piece of equipment that can take those wood chips and burn them at a very, very high temperature, much like the steam generators in the big power plants. So they burn these chips at very high temperatures and they create a product called biochar. Biochar is a substance that if you look at it, it's granular, but it looks like a granular charcoal, like charcoal briquettes that you would put in your barbecue
Uh-huh.
grill. It looks
Yeah,
exactly like that, but it's exactly the opposite of the charcoal brick. The charcoal brick is coal essentially, but
absolutely.
biochar is is the remains of the tree after it's been burned at very, very high temperature. And so what is the purpose of biochar? Biochar happens to be carbon absorbent. That means it absorbs carbon from the outside. It also absorbs petroleum. It acts like a sponge. So if you're in the petroleum business and you have an old well that you want to close and you'd like to clean it up nicely, you would pack it full of biochar. And the biochar would absorb all that oil that has accumulated around the well. Biochar also acts as a fertilizer. It's great as a fertilizer. It's great as a something to stabilize the soil. So in countries where you have landslides occurring often, or where you're trying to create a farm on the side of a mountain and you don't want the soil to drift down the mountain, you mix in biochar. It's very strong. When you touch it, it feels almost like diamonds. It's very, very, very sturdy, but it has these unique qualities that it absorbs the carbon. So the client learned about this process and decided to make the investment to buy the biochar equipment, the equipment to create the biochar. And we learned that because of this carbon absorbing quality, it could qualify for carbon credits. So you have to go through a very rigorous testing process and qualification process to verify that your product is indeed worthy of being assigned carbon credits. And there's essentially two organizations, at least for this conversation, that are relevant. There is the US agency that's qualifying products for carbon credits, and then there's a European Union society
Understood.
or organization that qualifies products for carbon credits. And the biochar that my client's producing um, is qualified in both Europe and the USA.
Wonderful.
Things went remarkably well. Instead, in Bolivia, these mills are out in the jungle, and so it's not cost effective to move all of the mulch by truck or by vehicle or even by train because they don't have railroads out into the Amazon jungle. So what was happening before the biochar project is these wood chips were just accumulating in giant mountains. We had mountains of wood chips from years of milling the trees. So now we are consuming the wood chips, burning them, and turning them into biochar. So the point I was trying to make there is that many mills are located in remote locations, and so it's unfortunate again that so much of the tree, 70% of the tree is wasted and not utilized. But now we found a really good use for it. So it's really, from a biological and an ecological standpoint, very efficient, very environmentally friendly. You're not essentially throwing away the tree. You're converting the tree into something that's good for the environment, good for the earth, and
Absolutely.
it's a
Giving it back to the environment itself. Yeah,
exactly. Reintroducing it back into the environment, into the ecosystem in a positive way to help balance out the carbon burning activities, generating activities that humans engage in with the vehicle.
absolutely.
Yeah. So once we built our first plant and we started generating the biochar, we've suddenly realized a lot of people were interested in buying our credits. There is a, I won't use names, but there's an organization, a company that's been created in Europe that is banking. When I say banking, they're buying carbon credits now at very low prices and they're banking them
So,
to
Ed, thank you so much for that brief introduction. But before we move further, can you explain to us and our audience what are carbon credits?
carbon credits are they're really just like an entry on a ledger. It's not tangible. It's not something you can put your hands on. A carbon credit is something that is assigned by these qualification agencies, one in the US and one in Europe. The biochar, for example, for every ton of biochar, the rating agencies have agreed that you would be entitled to a certain number of carbon credits for creating this biochar. So if you create let's just give an example. If you create a ton of biochar, you get 1,000 carbon credits and they go into your bank account. But it's a digital bank account. There's nothing tangible, nothing that you can see. It's just by virtue of the certification process that you've created something that's helping the environment, you get a carbon credit. So back to my career, this is just an outgrowth of what's been a large part of my practice my entire life, which is power generation, proper usage of power, more efficient usage of power and resources, and a way to help balance the Earth's ecosystem and diminish the impact of human activity and to increase the natural balance of nature's way of preserving the environment itself. We're allowing the biochar to help nature heal the wounds that the humans inflict upon the planet when they're engaging in their activities, such as flying jets all over the planet and things like that. So this has become a very important and new aspect of my practice. I'm very excited to participate in it. I started to tell you about this company in Europe that was trying to buy up all of my clients' production. They, we have 5 mills. Right now, we only have one biochar facility. We've already started to build the second biochar facility, and eventually we plan to turn have biochar facilities at all 5 plants to avoid the waste of the trees that are being chopped up into wood chips. And so we'll be able to sell the biochar, which is a fertilizer and a soil stabilizer and a carbon absorbent. And we'll also be able to sell the carbon credits. Now, because carbon credits have become so important to environmentalists and to most governments in the world who are paying attention to the environment, it's a fairly highly desirable product to have right now, a carbon credit. Companies like Microsoft, like Apple, Meta, all of these companies that consume a lot of electricity and consume a lot of energy, which of course has its consequences to the environment. They want to buy these carbon credits to help demonstrate to the public that yes, we do pollute, but on the other hand, we also
Set.
offset the pollution with the credit that's generated by this product that's helping the environment. So I was surprised to learn that, and I think I learned in 2022, just three years ago, that there is a number of very large companies that have created a tremendous fund, monetary fund of money to buy carbon credits. They approached us and we negotiated with them for many months, but it was clear pretty early on that they wanted to buy them cheap. They wanted to hold on to them, let the price go up, and then sell them later for a profit. And we decided to take a pass on that. And instead of selling it to someone who's going to bank the credits, we would just sell them directly to the consumers like Microsoft, who recognize their social responsibility to add to the environment, to heal the environment, to bring things back into more of a natural balance. So we had the opportunity to negotiate directly with Microsoft. After we declined to engage in the transaction with the banking entity that's banking the credits, we went directly to the consumer, which is Microsoft. And we successfully concluded about a month ago the largest sale in terms of tons of material. I mean, remember, for each ton, you get a certain number of credits. The largest single sale of tonnage of biochar, which is one of the products that qualifies for these credits, to Microsoft. And we were really excited to be part of this incredible transaction, which is, I think, helping us take a big leap forward into the healing process for the planet and bringing things back into a natural balance so that we don't have to suffer the effects of having all of this carbon in the atmosphere.
That's brilliant. That's wonderful, Ed. So my question to you is, why does a company like Microsoft needs to buy carbon credits from you? they do run their own carbon offset projects. They promote their CSR activities and they run their carbon offset projects. But are they emitting so much of a carbon that their carbon offset projects are not equivalent to how much they are emitting? And that's why they want to buy credits from you so that they can balance out their carbon emission and carbon offset. Am I correct?
You're correct, but for Microsoft to build its own projects to offset the carbon that they generate, let's talk about that for a minute. People are thinking, Microsoft, gee, why are they consuming generating
Exactly.
why are they generating so much carbon? I don't see Microsoft generating carbon. Well, right now, you and I are generating carbon.
Absolutely.
You're on the line, I'm on the line, there's electricity, there's cable, fiber optics. All of these things are being utilized more and more, and we're now into the billions of people that are connected online every day, 24 hours a day. And this is a very energy intensive business. The little bit of energy that you and I are consuming right now doesn't amount to much. But when you multiply it by 100 million or 500 million users, then you're talking an enormous impact of electricity, which, by the way, is now becoming a more important commodity in America because of the increased usage of the internet. And we're all using our iPhones every day. We're using our computers every day. One computer doesn't consume much electricity, but there's millions of computers and billions of iPhones or similar devices. And when you consider the cost and the need to provide electricity and to move the data through the fiber optic cables, it adds up to a tremendous amount of energy consumption
Absolutely.
to the point now where America is facing power shortages. They're already projecting power shortages. And one of my clients, another client that I represent in Florida, is building the centers, data centers to allow companies like Microsoft, Apple, etc., Meta have locations to process their data more efficiently. And this company is doing something quite unique. The name of the company is Duos, Duos Technologies. It is a publicly traded company based in Jacksonville, and they are rolling out a division to build power data centers plus power to power the data center. They would not be first of all, they would not be a drain on the power grid. They would not take away from the electric power that you and I would need for our homes because they're going to build centers that have data centers along with a power generation unit that is a freestanding unit to power the data center itself, which will help diminish the load being placed on the power grid in the US and help things again restore back to a natural balance. And this is a very forward thinking idea. If you can have the data centers which are now we talked about it. We have billions of users. Of course, that's going to consume a lot of electricity. If you have the data center with its own source of power, then you have solved many of the problems that are associated with having so much commerce and
Absolutely.
discussion on the internet.
Absolutely. Ed, when I was doing my research, I read something about carbon trading. I came across a carbon exchange back in Singapore, which allows you to trade carbon credits. Can you explain a bit about that? What is this whole exchange and carbon trading industry all about?
Well, it's just like anything of value. It's like the stock exchange. It's like Bitcoin exchange. People are anticipating carbon credits are going to become very important. That's why this other company I mentioned to you earlier is trying to buy the carbon credits and bank them, meaning just hold on to them, wait 5 years or 10 years until the price of the carbon credit doubles, triples, or quadruples, and then they'll sell it. So these exchanges are just places where people are doing exactly that. Buy low, sell high, right? So if you find somebody who can generate carbon credits that have been certified by the certifying agencies, then if you can get it at a good price, you can offer it on the exchange for sale, and it becomes a point of commerce. Buy low, sell high.
It can be the next Bitcoin.
Or it could be the next form of a Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to become a collector of carbon credits, which I'm telling you, there's a company in Europe that's doing that right now. They're buying up millions of carbon credits. It became clear to me pretty quickly when they told us they wanted to lock us into the same price for 10 years and they wanted all of our production. I started thinking about it and I'm like, and no price escalators. I'm like, what these guys are doing is they're trying to buy this cheap and they're going to hold on to it for 5 or 10 years. And then when the planet really needs carbon credits and more countries come along and come into line, it's going to be a great make money.
Wonderful. And I came across a company in Europe that's selling you carbon credits as a subscription, like for an individual, like how I am subscribing to Netflix, I can subscribe on a monthly base for a carbon credit of, if I am using my car, if I using electricity, and I get to offset that to subscription. Do you think this model will work in future and explode?
I think it has potential. It really depends upon the social responsibility of each person. I assume companies can also subscribe. I'm not familiar with the subscription method, but I think the giant companies like Meta, like Microsoft, like Apple are going to go straight to the source instead of subscribing. Why would someone create a subscription unless they have an opportunity to make money, right? So there's a profit built into their ability to deliver you the carbon credit. Larger players in the market are just going to go straight to the source and buy the carbon credits from people who generate the carbon credits and have no middleman in between. There's no reason for that for them. And as you mentioned, companies like Microsoft have their own projects to equalize and diminish the carbon footprint of their business. But so subscriptions are probably a great idea for people who don't really know much about it, who want to participate in some way. And, there's a market for everything. And I don't think it's going to be a major player in the carbon credit business, but I can see how, if you're a socially responsible person and you feel like, your own family's activities create a certain amount of carbon footprint and you want to reduce that, you can subscribe and makes you feel good that you're doing something good back for the earth and making the environment better.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's interesting. And you have been the guiding force for so many companies and across different industries. Is sustainability really a boardroom discussion that happens during the AGMs?
Absolutely. I know the general counsel at Nestle very, very well. Nestle is one of the largest, biggest brands on the planet, and they are incredibly focused on social responsibility. And they want to make certain that for every activity that they engage in that harms the environment, they want to do something to offset that in another way. They're also very focused on avoiding child labor in countries where they do business and trying to make certain that there's fairness and equality on the distribution of wealth. I was very fascinated to learn that Nestle observed that, I mean, it started out as a chocolate company, right? So chocolate is one of their main lines. So they consume a lot of cocoa beans and they buy chocolate from farmers in Africa and South America and all over the world. And some of the less developed countries in Africa, you have a very patriarchal society where the man generally conducts the business and the man collects the money and earns the money. But Nestle engaged a program whereby these farms, which are generally owned by families, they were insisting that the money that's paid to the farmers be paid equally to the husband and wife, for example. So they make the producers agree in advance that the money will not just get paid to the husband. It will be paid equally to the husband and the wife, which is really interesting and very laudable goal to make sure that the people in these less developed countries where women are often cut out of the economic
Yes.
circle, they are included in the economic circle and they are allowed to participate in the wealth that's being created by the sale of the cocoa beans. I thought that was very, very advanced thinking, really smart. And I congratulated the general counsel on her work there. I said, this is really something that I wish more companies in the world would think about.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's very interesting. Maintaining equality based, at every level. Very interesting. I want to off sustainability and off business. I want to understand your methodology. Like, what are the principles that guide your leadership?
Well, my leadership is driven by customer service. I provide a service which is legal advice, and I want my clients to succeed, to help them organize their businesses and their affairs in such a fashion that it doesn't harm others, but it does help them accomplish their goals. Again, a large part of my practice has been throughout the decades power generation and fuel. So I represent fuel companies and I represent power generation companies. And both of those activities involve carbon, the production of carbon. So, as an environmentalist, I am very concerned about the planet as well. I want to make certain that whatever we do, whatever physical activities we're engaged in, we don't disturb the environment. And in fact, it would be great if we could all do something to improve the environment. So that's why I like to work on projects like the data center projects that have their own source of power, because as you put more drain on the US power grid, you're now forced to go back to the large scale power plants, which are either going to be coal fired plants, oil fired plants, or nuclear plants. Of the three, I personally prefer nuclear. It does have, the dangerous factor that if there is a tragedy such as the one they had at Fukushima, there could be substantial damage done. But as a whole, nuclear energy is probably the cleanest way, apart from solar and wind, to produce large scale or large volumes of electricity. My personal desires as a biologist to protect our environment, I help effectuate through working with companies to build technologies and ways to deliver power and fuel that in ways that are more efficient and more helpful to the ecology and the biology of our planet.
That's interesting. Thank you, Ed. One final question, Ed, and this basically I asked with all my guests. What advice did you receive that changed your perspective professionally and personally?
Well, I had a from in university, I had a phenomenal biology professor who also taught me ecology, and his name is Keith Hansen. He passed away a few years ago, but Keith was an incredible biologist, and he helped me learn and understand that even the smallest little things on the planet, like the mosses and lichens and all these little insignificant plants and insects that we don't pay much attention to really do have an importance and an impact on our planet and our life. And to me, it just brings everything back to reality. We have so much lack of reality on the internet. I mean, we have things that are invented electronically, but I love to be back in contact with the earth itself and with nature itself. And so this was a person who had a big influence on me. Also, my chemistry professors who taught me the importance of the chemical reactions that go on every day involving our bodies, involving activities such as producing power, milling wood, all of these things. There's chemical reactions that go on. People don't realize it, they don't see it, but it's happening. The creation of the biochar, there's a tremendous chemical reaction that occurs there. You take a product which is wood and you convert it into something that absorbs carbon. So it's kind of like magic, but it's real. It's real. It's magic, but it's real. And it also can, if you are creative, you can come up with better, bigger and better ways to do things that will not harm the
Absolutely.
planet.
Absolutely. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you so much for being a part of our show. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's all my pleasure. I mean, thank you for the opportunity. I'm very grateful to have the chance to speak with you and all of your listeners.